Hello, I'm Peter Carter. I'm director of the Climate Emergency Institute, and I'm going to give you an update on the climate situation, the climate emergency, which is now a biosphere Earth emergency. The WMO, the World Meteorological Office, released a update forecast on what's going to happen with the global temperature over the next 5 years. And I made some notes here because I don't want to miss out any of the points. For at least 1 year, we'll be at 1.5 degrees C over the next 5 years. In the Northern Hemisphere, we're at 1.5 degrees C already. There's definitely, no question, going to be a new record and new record years within the next 5 years. Over the past 3-4 years, we actually have been under a cooling La Nina influence. And what is very amazing about that is that over these past few years, nevertheless, we have had unprecedented ever extreme weather events, all of them. Not only fires, heat, drought, rivers drying up in Europe, China having an extraordinarily prolonged drought, that's never happened before in history, and it goes on with rivers, etc. So the forecast is that we will be in a warming El Nino the end of the year, they say December. And that's really, when things, as I say, are going to get extremely, extremely tough. One thing that the El Nino does, as well as increase the surface temperature generally, it increases fires and it increases drought in the Amazon. And this El Nino, the question arises, is this going to be an ordinary El Nino, or is it going to be a powerful or so-called super El Nino? I caught a meteorologist from Australia, because Australia is very worried, because in El Nino, Australia goes into severe drought. And he said that it looks like this next El Nino will be a super El Nino. So that's going to be super bad. So the regions that are going to be affected by the projections over the next 5 years, with this back to a rapidly increasing global temperature, I want to stress again that the Northern Hemisphere temperature increases never slowed. It's been increasing rapidly since 2000. So the regions to be affected, my little region on the world map, British Columbia is one of them, most of the United States, most of Europe, Central Asia, Scandinavia, Russia and Siberia. Siberia in particularly is projected to be the fastest heating land region of all, and we've been seeing that for many, many years. That's a huge concern, of course, because of the permafrost in Siberia. Greenland will be heating up faster. China will be heating up faster. Pakistan and Afghanistan, Middle East, Africa, Northern Africa will be heating up faster. Central Africa, East Africa, including the Horn of Africa, that's in that terrible 4-year drought situation right now, and also South Africa. Huge, vast, crucial regions of the Earth, of our world, are going to be heated up a lot faster than they ever have been before. So, the 1.5 degrees C. Why are we so extremely worried about 1.5 degrees C? Well, the reason is that it was made obvious in the 2018 excellent IPCC 1.5 degrees C report that 1.5 C is globally disastrous. It is a completely different world that we have been living in, 1.5 degrees C. And I really want to stress that. And that affects all regions, the vulnerable regions the worst, but all regions are affected by greatly increased disastrous impacts at 1.5 degrees C. There's actually a huge difference between what we're at now, which is about 1.1, 1.12 degrees C, and 1.5 degrees C. An enormous. There are regions already, countries already, that have been experiencing and are experiencing unprecedented heat waves. And that includes India, which is still registering record high temperatures. It includes Indochina Peninsula, that's Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, those countries on that peninsula. And they have recorded record ever temperatures. And that is forecast to continue through the summer for those countries. And also China. China is now back in a heat wave. A couple of weeks ago it was in a heat wave as well. And there's some record temperatures being recorded in China. The most important message, the most important fact of the science ever, I repeat again, the IPCC 6th assessment told us that global emissions had to be put into decline immediately and rapidly. That message, and it's absurd and it's odd, that message still is not out there. And we need that message to be out there because every year, and the IPCC 6th assessment made this clear, every year of delay now increases the extreme weather events that we're experiencing all over the world. And by the way, the Alberta fires having occurred earlier than they ever have before, this is an extreme weather trend right across the planet, that these extreme events are happening earlier and they're lasting longer. So they're not only unprecedented in severity, they're unprecedented in duration. And this was predicted by the IPCC years ago. So this is a prediction that we're now witnessing and we're now forced to suffer under. I forgot to mention that another huge region that is going to warm up most rapidly over this next 5-year period is Greenland. And the Greenland ice sheet, the loss of mass is absolutely ginormous, and the mass loss due to the rapid melting of Greenland, that's it. So here we are. There's no question that, as the IPCC reported, all regions of the planet are experiencing extreme weather events. They are increasing. They are due to our human emissions, mainly fossil fuel emissions, and nothing is more certain that they will continue to increase. Adaptation, of course, is vital. Cooling centers, water spraying regions, medics are online around, particularly in the cities, to help people when they are overwhelmed by the extreme heat. The cities, by the way, are now are becoming the worst places to live because of extreme heat events, because cities have this well-known phenomenon called the urban heat island effect, whereby the temperature is increased much higher, especially during extreme weather events, and that's simply because there's a lot of black asphalt surface in cities, there's a lot of concrete, they absorb heat and they store heat. There are very tall buildings made of steel and concrete, and they form what's been referred to as heat corridors. And so, again, this means that unless the IPCC's advice is followed, and unless global emissions are put into immediate and rapid decline, the future is grim, grim indeed. We're looking at a future forever getting worse for everyone, everywhere, if That does not happen. And I've been saying, and many people have been saying for many, many years, that that is readily achievable, that exchanging, converting all fossil fuel energy to our great, brilliant, clean, renewable, everlasting energies, we have been able to do this, and we've known this for a great many years. So I guess I should ask myself, well, why isn't this happening? The big reason this is not happening is the evil intervention of our governments. Our governments are subsidizing the fossil fuel industry, and the subsidies are increasing. On consumption subsidies that the International Energy Agency follows, last year's fossil fuel subsidies were double the year before. The IMF, of course, and I think this is better known now, the IMF, when it calculates all of the financial benefits given by governments so that the fossil fuel industry can more easily extract more fossil fuels, that is trillions of dollars. And the last estimate that they did a couple of years ago was $5.9 trillion. So what this means is literally that our governments are killing us. Our governments are literally wiping out our future. Our governments are literally leaving a hell on earth for all the children everywhere to grow up in, or rather I should say try to grow up in, struggle to grow up in. So governments giving our money so the fossil fuel industry can keep polluting the planet with greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. And air pollution kills 10 million people year after year, every year. That's evil. That's a terrible, terrible crime. I got some numbers on coal. Coal reached a record high in 2010. And with a little bit of ups and downs, it stayed on that record high right up to the present time. And that record high is forecast to continue at least until 2025. So we have record amounts of coal which are being burnt. And most of this is in China. A lot of it is in India. But all countries, practically all countries, are still burning coal. The United States is still burning a lot of coal. Germany is still burning a lot of coal. So this all-time high on coal consumption, production, is 4 times higher than it was in 1990. Since 1990, just a couple of decades, the burning of coal has increased 4-fold. What everybody knows is the very worst thing for the climate and the air is being rapidly, rapidly increased. Now, I looked at the regional breakdown of coal consumption, and it's really terrible because all regions have over the past few years been increasing their coal production and consumption and burning. All regions. There's a projection of coal power up to 2030. And by 2030, the projection is that 30% of all power in the world will be coal-fired. So that means a huge, huge rapid increase in CO2 and also methane. All fossil fuels are a source of methane. Coal is, we've known that for decades. Oil is, and natural gas is. Coal is actually the largest proportion of fossil fuel power production. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's unbelievable, with everything that we've known about coal sort of forever. It's not far off, it's only about 10% off all the rest of the power sources combined. Coal power production has increased 3.5 times since 1990. What do we have to do about this? Everything, as I've been saying for many, many years, is getting worse faster. All the many climate indicators, ocean indicators, forest indicators. They're all at record high bad, and they're all increasing faster than ever. So all of these indicators which indicate the bad health of our planet, all of these indicators are at all-time highs, and they're still increasing at all-time high. If we allow our governments and corporations to continue extracting and burning fossil fuels and increasing the productivity of fossil fuels and the burning of fossil fuels, we have no future. If we continue on with what's called business as usual, there is no future. I mean, you can say there's a future not worth living, but there's not a future, because all of these extreme weather events are increasing everywhere so fast. So, of course, the most important of the climate change indicators are the atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations. That's CO2, mainly CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide. Although I've got to say there are the other synthetic greenhouse gases called F-gases, and the IPCC-AR6 showed that these very worst, very most potent, longer-lasting greenhouse gases, they're being increased faster than any of the other greenhouse gases. This is all absolutely insane. It's insanely evil. Atmospheric CO2, as I say, is still accelerating. It's now over 50% higher than its pre-industrial concentration. 50% higher. And the rate of CO2 increase, the IPCC says, is a 56 million year high. I call this a suicide scenario. So the worst situation that many of you will be aware of is the situation with regards to atmospheric methane. Atmospheric methane has increased at an accelerating rate. Over the past few years, from 2019, methane has increased at an explosive rate. So all the scientists went to work saying, what is causing this? And it's now agreed that it is the worst nightmare scenario that many of us have had with regards to global warming and climate change. We have methane feedback emissions now. We have allowed atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide and methane, nitrous oxide to reach such unprecedented high levels, and we've allowed the global surface warming and the heating to continue, that we have methane feedback emissions, and those emissions, the scientists are also agreed on, are coming from the world's wetlands. They're coming from tropical wetlands, where we expected them first to come, because there's vast amounts of carbon in the tropical wetlands. They're huge, and of course they're already hot. But the investigations also found that we have methane emissions from the northern wetlands, from the far north subarctic wetlands. And they're vast too, particularly in Canada. Vast wetlands. It's very clear from the Copernicus surface methane concentrations, and it's quite dramatic. All of the wetlands are emitting massive amounts of methane. So, what's the solution? To my mind, for many years now, the solution has been the scientists. For the scientists to make recommendations according to the science. And that recommendation is to have governments and corporations put greenhouse gas emissions into immediate and rapid decline. With regards to the national academies and the royal societies, by the way, this is their mandate. Their mandate is to inform governments on scientific issues of significance to the general public. There never has been anything more significant than global climate change. as our Secretary General Antonio Guterres has made very clear over and over. This is an existential situation. This is a matter of our survival. The survival of civilization, certainly, but the survival of the human race, the human population, and the survival of most life on Earth. And that's because of methane feedback. That's because of methane feedback more than anything else. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas, over 80 times as powerful as carbon dioxide. And so here we have methane. It has increased from pre-industrial, it has increased 2.6-fold. CO2 has increased 50%. Methane has increased by a factor of 2.6. And it is accelerating, and it is increasing today at an explosive rate. There's no other term to apply to it. And scientists did apply that term actually to the big increase in CO2 which we had in the last big El Nino. So if we don't act very, very fast, if they're not powerful interventions, we are not going to make it. And we're going to take most of life down with us. That's a crime, that's an evil, because of this beautiful planet and wonderful wildlife and everything that we all enjoy. We're looking at that. We know that that's disappearing. We know that life is disappearing fast. There was another big, major study by the Royal Society just a couple of weeks ago on what's been called the insect apocalypse. You hardly ever see an insect anymore. And yeah, they agreed. Yeah, the evidence is there. The number of insects is in free fall. It is happening everywhere, and it is due to human activities. And that includes changing the climate, as well as changing the land, agriculture, as well as pesticides. As I say, what impact is going to get us as a society, to say action now, powerful action, intervention? What on earth is it going to take? So what's it going to take? For many years, Greenpeace has been publishing a report called the Energy Revolution. What it's going to take is revolution. There is one word for what we have to do to give the future a chance. And however efficiently we respond to the emergency, we have a future which is going to get worse and worse and worse. So, this is being forced onto the public, onto the people, onto the world population by a small minority of very powerful people. The corporate banks, the big banks, obviously the big fossil fuel corporations, but now the governments are really in league. They're a partner with this tyranny, unprecedented oppression on people, and of course billions of most vulnerable populations, and they're already being impacted. They're already seeing decline in their food productivity. They're already seeing decline in their access to proper potable fresh water. This is already happening on a population vast scale. So I've said for many years, and of course I've been often asked, well, what can I do? What can we do? The most readily and rapidly effective thing to do is to go vegan because of methane. Cows are a major source of methane, and what is called the world cattle herd is increasing. And of course, it's a major driver in the deforestation of the Amazon. And yes, I've always loved my milk and cream and cheese. But you know, you just have to give these things up when you see what's happening to the planet and what's in store for the future. And so I promote global veganization. It is, after all, I'm a medically qualified doctor, it is, after all, the healthiest diet for us to follow. And that's confirmed in detail with respect to greenhouse gas emissions contribution by the IPCC 6 assessment. So please go vegan, personally, your family. There's absolutely no reason why not to. But I've also said that people need to look at what's being done with their money. And myself and everybody in the past, we've always sort of allowed the bank or the investment company or whatever, you know, just take care of that, right? We really haven't given a second thought to, well, what's being done with all that money, because it's a huge amount of money. So we need to divest. Divest was a brilliant concept by 350.org. And by the way, 350.org does have a campaign to stop fossil fuel subsidies. But that campaign needs to be general, whole of civil society, forcing governments, compelling governments to stop wrecking the planet and wiping out our future. The other thing that we have to do, and I really, in my lifetime, I'm sort of guilty of not doing this very much. You have to get political, in the big sense. In the big sense. You're going to support your favorite political party, that's fine. But what we need to do, and what rather belatedly I did start to do, is you have to inform and lobby every political party in your country. That's what you have to do. You know, this is a serious matter, and you have to get down to serious work on it. So that's another thing. Now, we have, as we've always had, for global environmental pollutions and degradations, we have an element of protest. And we have the example of Greta Thunberg. But just think of all the work and the brilliant knowledge that Greta had and has on climate change, and the great understanding. She was one of the people that was saying, the government are not telling us the truth. The government are not doing what the science indicates has to be done. And she said, we are being told that we have to deal with this mess with technologies which don't even exist yet. She understood all that, right? She was invited to speak all over the world. Great, wonderful example. Didn't change anything, did it? And she's an inspiration for many other young people. But it is going to take a lot more to force governments and corporations to put emissions into decline. And that means a worldwide revolution. A revolution in our attitudes, a revolution in our minds, a revolution in how we think about life, a revolution certainly in our economics, certainly a revolution in our economics, a revolution in energy. Greenpeace has been promoting that for decades, and a political revolution. And a politically based revolution. The revolution that people are carrying out, I mean, is certainly a totally peaceful revolution. But even so, the governments have been passing legislation and have been cracking down on the protesters. Across the world, protesters for doing very little, certainly a peaceful protest. The courts, according to the regulations, have put them in jail. They've had jail sentences for doing the right thing, jail sentences for trying to save something for their own future. Because yes, most of them are young, not all of them, but most of them are young. So it means a different narrative. That's something that sort of the philosophers amongst our society talk about, and it's very important. Our narrative is all wrong. It couldn't be more wrong. So we have to change the narrative, right? We have to talk about this within our families. We have to talk about this within our communities. We have to get out there with the young people and we have to protest. We have to at least hold up some banners and say, do not destroy this planet, right? We have to at least do that. And there's only one time to start, and that's today. Only one time to start, and that is now. And if you're feeling overwhelmed by this, if you're feeling anxious and depressed, that's perfectly reasonable. But let me tell you, and I'm not the only one that's experienced this, the cure for anxiety and depression about global climate change is action against global climate change. And that's action against the powers that are making this terrible thing happen, against the corporations, but today against our governments, against all our governments. They're giving us, as Greta explained, they're giving us phony excuses. They're giving us platitudes, and they are sort of remaking the science so that the science has become phony. So my appeal is to get together on this thing and do the right thing. So thanks for listening. Bye.